Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is David Hood, still in the press box here in Death Valley, where the Tigers have pulled off a 42-21 victory over the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets on Military Appreciation Day. It was kind of a cloudy, cold afternoon here in the valley, a lot of purple. Maybe the stands weren't completely full, but they were treated to one of the Tigers' most complete efforts this season. Clemson went ahead of Georgia Tech 42-7 in the fourth quarter after Shelton Lewis, a freshman, returned a Haynes King pass 46 yards for a touchdown. Tigers up 42-7 at that point. They're going to throw everybody out of the stadium here. Tigers were up 42-7 at that point, and then it was time to just empty the bench. Will Shipley came back, had over 70 yards. It was his first game back after missing last week in the end of the NC State game with a concussion. He returned, scored a touchdown, 36-yard touchdown run. Phil Maffa, close to 100 yards. It looks like the Tigers are maybe figuring out what they're going to do with those two guys. Saw Kate Klubnik step up in the pocket a number of times, made big throws. Clemson was 4 of 5 on fourth down. The only time they didn't convert was early in the game when we don't know what happened. I don't know if punter Aiden Swanson just called his own number or if perhaps it was a call from the coaches, but facing a 4th and 9 from their own 21, Swanson tried to run it. He was tackled after just 4 yards, and Georgia Tech scored their first touchdown, up 7-0. Clemson's offense looked out of sync at that point, but then they came back, and it was really an 18-play, 75-yard drive that took 9:51 off the clock that kind of turned the tide for the Tigers. Now, those numbers, let's look at it. 18 plays, that's the largest number of plays for a drive this season. 9:51, one of the largest, in fact, it is the longest scoring drive in Clemson football history. It is the second longest drive in Clemson history, second only to the drive that ended that game against Alabama back in 2018 in the national championship when the Tigers ran the last 10:02 off the clock. So a complete effort. Clemson's offense finding a little bit of rhythm, good mix of run and pass. Like I said, one of the great things I saw today was Cade Klubnik actually stepping up in the pocket to make throws and not off of his back foot. We saw the offensive line kind of run out with that same group that they ran out with last week. But Colin Sadler, interesting to me, moved into left guard at times. So you had Tristan Lee at left tackle, Colin Sadler at left guard, Will Putnam at center, Harris Sewell, the freshman, at right guard, and then, of course, Blake Miller at right tackle. That seemed to work pretty good at times. Trent Howard, he was also in there. That looked pretty good at times, too. So the Tigers really able to pull away with a complete victory, but it's all about the defense on this one. Haynes King, at one point in the second half, had 1 yard passing. This is a Georgia Tech offense that averages over 200 yards through the air, over 200 yards on the ground. They were held to just over 200 yards of total offense on the day. In fact, 254, their second lowest total of the year. They only had 250 in the win over Miami, but a low passing total for the year. They only had 99 yards rushing against Miami, so they're rushing 117 today, the second lowest total of the year there. Otherwise, this is an offense that's running up over 600 and 500 yards every week on people. 635 against North Carolina a couple of weeks ago. Over 500 on Tony Elliott in Virginia last week, as they were putting up some real points. So for the Clemson defense, it was just really all about those freshmen, though, man. So 4 freshmen with interceptions: Kylan Griffin, Khalil Barnes, Shelton Lewis, and Avion Terrell. And of course, it was Shelton Lewis. Like I said, that pick six that kind of iced everything. Clemson then able to empty the bench. 10 total freshmen made tackles today. How about that? So this defense really starting to show up. And again, this is a Georgia Tech offense that only had 100 yards through 3 quarters. And then after Clemson went up 42-7, it was a whole lot of freshmen and a whole lot of reserves out there on the field. So Georgia Tech able really to gain 150 yards or so in the fourth quarter after only 100 through 3. They left the starter in, Haynes King, they left him in the entire game to pad some stats, whatever, make them feel good about themselves. But it was over fairly quickly. So the Tigers, 42-21, final home game next week. They host that North Carolina football team. They're pretty good too. And quarterback Drake May, but right now the defense playing at a very high level. So the Tigers take it. They're bowl eligible with a win. Maybe they can get a better bowl game if they finish with wins in the final 2 games against the 2 Carolinas, North Carolina and South Carolina. But for now, a celebration on Military Appreciation Day. Tigers take it to the Jackets. They humble the Bumble, 42-21.